This is Richard Kusiolek. I'm managing editor for GMCstreamTV, and we're very lucky today. We're going to be talking with a very well-known stakeholder who's with a company called A10 Networks, and we're here in Baltimore, Maryland.
Yes.
Yes, and we're here at the Cyber Symposium, very important event with AFCEA, which is an organization that sponsors these types of events. So I'm going to give a little intro, if you will. And so, one of the things that I really found that was really amazing when I was doing a lot of research, according to research, this security in communications industry is really hot now, and I use the word blast. It's going to blast. The financial folks are saying it's going to be from 6.7 billion to 22.2 billion in 2021. So you're really in a sweet spot, if you will.
Yes.
And so if you look at A10, and you're going to be you know more about A10 Networks than I do, I'm sure, including application delivery controllers, ADCs. Mm-hmm. You do Lightning Application Delivery Service, which is Lightning ADS. You also do carrier-grade network address translation, or CGN. If I make any mistakes in acronyms, please correct me.
Yes.
Threat protection systems, or TPS. SSL Insight, SSLi, lowercase I, of course, and Convergent firewalls, or CFW, is part of the top tier of these companies. So you're really on the top tier. So today, as I mentioned before, we're here in Baltimore, and we're meeting with James Schweitzer.
Yes.
Your title is Lead Federal SE for A10 Networks, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And Jim, before we begin, I always like the people I'm interviewing to tell us a little bit, our subscribers, a little bit about yourself. How did you come about with A10? A little bit about your background.
Okay, excellent. So I've been with A10 Networks for 2 years. Okay. It'll be 2 years next month. Prior to A10, I worked for a contractor, a federally funded research and development center, the MITRE Corporation, for 11 years in their security center. And so from there, really fostered kind of a knowledge of security, worked supporting the federal government with agencies in the DC area, overseas, and really garnered an appreciation. Through this, I met a colleague who worked for A10 Networks, who was discussing the technology, the capability, and really what A10 was looking to do. And from that really piqued my interest and led me to kind of talk to them about what opportunities they may have.
So you were very, very fortunate to not only have a great background, but to make the right connection.
Yes.
And as I've talked a lot with people who are looking for very qualified people, and I think A10 Networks is very, very lucky you made that connection. Jim, I definitely want to focus on really two key topics today, which we talked about earlier. We're going to save them until the end.
Sure.
Because I think they're really important announcements that are going to be made today. And so I want to kind of focus on some questions here. And are your product sets moving more towards future adaptive networks? Is that where you're moving?
So yes, it is, and I think that's a really important destination we want to move to. And I think A10 is taking a very unique position with this. One of the things that we're looking at is our customers are traditionally risk averse. Technology changes. We know Moore's Law, every 18 months, we have significant change occurring. Look through, and A10 is through our Harmony controller and our Lightning ADC and our Thunder platforms, we have developed a bridge so that we can take folks in the existing data centers that want to begin transitioning into the cloud and provide them support for both. Because we think that it's going to be a moderate transition for organizations, commercial and federal, to really move to that point. Because while everyone likes to discuss the cloud and immediately moving and transitioning there, recognizing that it's going to take time and it's going to take some baby steps.
Right. Okay, so in other words, your company is seeing the future and you're making the right steps to meet that demand, and also the requirement of the government, the security aspects of it, which Lieutenant General Lynn talked about yesterday. Let me ask you, can the A10 network software really create a kind of a virtual network devices that can keep DISA agile in time of global crisis?
I believe it can, and I would say we can do that again through our virtual Thunder and through our Lightning ADC. As we go through this, how we do that, one of the things we have is with our Harmony controller, if the federal government recognizing diversity is key to try and operate in a contested battle space, if they want to work with the Azure cloud, a private cloud, within AWS, A10 provides the opportunity where they can have virtual devices in each one of those environments, sending telemetry data to our controller. So let's assume that there's something that takes place and one cloud is under some sort of an attack. They could still provide services to customers with these other clouds. We could still be receiving that information and assist them as they try and persevere and try and mitigate that information or mitigate that attack.
Yeah, well, that's really important, I think, strategically, so that our warfighters are always in a kind of actionable environment, so that they can, win the space, if you will. Not every adversary, as you know, in a government or are they in a government or even really private network,
Right.
triggers an alert. So how can you determine if suspicious activity is occurring in a very high security government network? How do you know what's going on?
Well, that I think really is a little blend of art and science.
Okay.
And so it's really where you try and provide some of the tools and techniques,
Okay.
but then it's also your personnel. And I think a really good example of that, I believe, is Clifford Stoll's book, The Cuckoo Egg,
Okay.
from early to mid-90s, where it was the discovery of an accounting error of 2 to 3 cents in billing led them to discover that there had been folks that had infiltrated their network. And so if you were to look at this, you would think, oh, well, it's 1 or 2 cents, that's no big deal.
Sure.
But really, it was that item that was of interest. And really, we have teams of individuals that I like to effectively call hunters. And they're really hunting in the environment, and they're looking for advanced adversaries, because the challenge we have is the advanced adversary doesn't do something that jumps out. It doesn't look like there's no shiny blinky light saying that I'm performing a bad malicious activity.
Right.
They really want to try and hide in the noise. And so A10, one of the things that we do, the tools we try and provide is really our SSL break and inspect, because we recognize that adversaries are using security to obfuscate whenever they send C2 traffic or when they want to drop malware. And so we want to provide the opportunity to open that up to inspection for other security devices, security vendors, traditionally in a multi-vendor environment.
Oh, well, that's what I call a great concept of partnership. So you're in a competitive environment, but you're working in a kind of a collaborative perspective. I think that's quite commendable.
Thank you. And I always use a tagline as we're like BASF. We don't make something, we make it better.
Oh.
Where a lot of our customers have an investment in security infrastructure, they've invested that capital.
Sure.
But if there's a significant volume of traffic that's being encrypted, it's blind to that.
Right.
And so we're going to go in and say, with another investment, you're able to recoup that initial capital investment in your security infrastructure.
Yeah, I think that's important too, because the government's very concerned about ROI. They're concerned about benefits. They're concerned about a lot of the things that used to ignite the sell-through process, in business.
Yes.
So they're very concerned about that. In just a little bit more research too, but in 2016, a U.S.-based cloud service was targeted by phishers. Okay, the U.S. government uses many of these industry services, and what safeguards are based on the networks to protect high sensitive data that resides in the cloud?
Well, that's a really challenging question, and I think that's going to depend on each one of the cloud providers that you have.
Okay.
And I think that's really one of the points as a vendor where we want to try and be as agnostic as possible to support any one of the cloud vendors that our customers, in this case the federal government, chooses to use.
Okay.
And that's really at A10, we initially started with one public cloud, moved to additional, and now we're expanding to include private cloud also. Because we believe that security is one of those items that, again, there's a lot of art in addition to the science.
Sure.
And with a private cloud, we want to be sure we support whatever implementation that the customer wants to have.
Okay. So again, I think as I mentioned earlier, the word agility is coming up again. This is what DISA is looking, I think, as far as on cybersecurity strategy. Agility is really important, especially in a kind of a hot environment.
After the first Gulf War in the 1990s, and again after the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001, the Army recognized that its 1980s-era systems were inadequate to support the needs of our troops in unconventional conflicts. When U.S. forces began their assault into Iraq in 2003, they did so with a new network that allowed commanders to connect, but only at the halt. The pace of the war quickly outran our forces' ability to communicate. The need to upgrade the network's capabilities and allow both commanders and soldiers to communicate while on the move was clear. WinT 2.0 delivers this capability.
It goes back to the basics of what we all do, which is the three basics: shoot, move, and communicate. And all this equipment, it lets us do that faster.
Like the Verizon or AT&T network we use every day, WinT is the Army's network it uses for voice and data communications during operations. WinT powers the devices our soldiers use, allowing them to talk, text, chat, and use battlefield applications designed to help them succeed and, most importantly, keep them safe. Providing a mobile voice and data communications brings new capabilities to the warfighter. The soldiers in the field can communicate and share information with each other. The commanders can in turn communicate with and share information with the soldiers in the field and with the freedom to move wherever they need to be on the battlefield. This type of mobile communication that many take for granted every day is just now becoming available to our troops operating overseas.
The ability to communicate with the BFTs and everybody else, you can see everybody on the field, know where they're at, it's really helpful.
The purpose is to enable the commander to make informed decisions anytime, anywhere on the battlefield. This is why WinT is the Army's #1 modernization priority.
You can look back in history and think about how we commanded on the move. At one time we used messengers or runners. We've used flags while we were moving formations. We've used radios to be able to talk to one another. In this digital age, we're now able to pass information rapidly, large quantities of information, to create a common picture so that commanders can command effectively and get their soldiers in the right place at the right time.
Now, of course, we're getting into the real good things here, which is what we talked about earlier, in the sense of we wanted to wait until the end to really kind of focus on some really key things. So, first, you were going to talk about, and I'll use my cheat sheet here, an insight into the top misunderstandings about SSL encryption those government security experts have. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? That's you're going to make some major announcement on some of these things, so we want to hear about it.
Sure, and so really one of the things that we've done is we put together, what we try to do is we want to address the 10 myths or misconceptions about SSL.
Okay.
And really it boils down to, I'll try and address a couple of the points here.
Yeah, please do.
One is it's slow, it's difficult, and if you want to implement something where you try and open up an SSL session to present that to a security device, that all of a sudden your performance is going to suffer, and now your users are going to complain. And A10, we have partnered with a vendor that makes custom hardware, it's commodity hardware, in order to address the encryption-decryption so that we don't suffer performance hit when we go through this, even using the newer key exchange and the newer algorithms like elliptic curve. So we think that's really one point. Another is, if you have security tools in your network today, an IDS, an IPS, an advanced threat protection, you can implement A10 without having to completely re-architect your network environment. And I think that's another item, because people look at it and say, well, if I'm going to implement this new technology, I need to have a major overhaul of what we have. And that's not really, we have designed our solution to support multiple deployment models to try and minimize this, so that if someone recognizes the need to try and gain access to that 50, 60, 70% of encrypted traffic on their network, they can do this without having to have a 6 or an 8-month process. Recognizing that there are challenges and there are things that have to be done ahead of time. Another item that people are oftentimes very concerned about are protecting the keys. So when you establish an SSL session and you establish it from your client to your server, you have a tunnel that's encrypted between those two endpoints. Well, now when you've introduced someone else in the middle that is opening that session and providing it to security tools, you've introduced risk. This is something I don't see, that I don't know where that is as a user.
Sure.
What happens? And so A10 has partnered with another same vendor provides silicon. Do we have it's a FIPS 140-2 level 3.
Okay.
And what that acronym stands for is FIPS is a standard. Level 3 means that there are physical protections in place. So even if someone has physical access to the device, they still can't extract the keys. So your data is secure, so you don't have to worry about another third actor being able to gain access to the session. So that we can provide a high degree of assurance that what we're providing to the security tools is not being provided to someone else.
Okay, great. You know, I was just thinking about this because, again, we both know, of course, that the government has a lot of legacy systems. And of course, I come out of the legacy environment. And I won't mention the vendor. But so would this also apply for different types of platforms and different types of operating systems and applications? If we look at the whole universe of DISA and the type of platforms and applications and operating systems, etc., that they're supporting, would this also be applicable?
Yes, and fortunately, because it's SSL or TLS, that's really agnostic to whether it's a Linux operating system, Macintosh, or Windows.
Sure.
So we're fortunate in that regard. What we have also, I think this is another benefit that A10 offers, is beyond just an HTTPS encrypted stream, we also offer other protocols where we can decrypt. So if, for instance, there was SSH, which is, again, is a great protocol for providing remote administration access, highly secure, but you may not want that departing your network. Because if it departs your network, you're not sure if someone is exfiltrating information. You know, or are they using RDP, remote desktop protocol, over SSH? You know, those are things that, again, it's a little bit of that art and science of recognizing what traffic is on your network, and if it's encrypted, is it trying to hide anything? You know, is it legitimate or not?
Sure. Wow. So I think that's a very strong point. I think, you know, with the folks in the acquisition area of DISA, which I met a few yesterday, I think that those are the things I think they're looking for.
Yes.
To be able to have the flexibility of working with the existing platforms that they've had for a number of years. Well, you know, secondly, there's a second point here, of course, you know, and I know you're waiting for this one, and so I'm going to kind of read it. And, you know, A10 Networks has a very new solution that helps the customer process encrypt SSL traffic at faster and less expensive speeds than anything else on the market.
Yes.
And I know that was going to be a big release,
Yes.
I believe today, is it?
Yes.
It's going to be released. Do you know what time?
That I'm not sure,
Okay.
but you know, I'll give a sneak peek. It's really the next generation silicon with our partner that was
Okay.
released. And so what we have is today A10 is a leader in using providing encryption and decryption services. Well, we're now using this newer, we have a significant increase in the connections per second that we can achieve for these various ciphers and algorithms. And that becomes important in the higher volume environments. So if you take DISA, for example, as a service provider, they have very large network connections, network pipes. And so in order to provide services to them, like the ones we're talking about for security, you have to provide a high number of connections per second in order to address that without implementing a problem in your service level agreement, so that when the user tries to click on a site, they won't sit and wait and have the beach ball of death, for instance.
Well, you know, one of the things I was thinking about is you were doing really a good job, I think, of answering my questions. Can you kind of give us a little bit of a window into A10 Networks? I mean, how many people are involved, you know, employed there? How long have they been in business? I hope this does not put you on the spot. But I think they give us, our subscribers, a really good look into really a great company. Maybe you can share that. And of course, if you have any other comments, please add them.
So I would say, one of my taglines is, you know, I think A10 is one of the greatest companies that no one's ever heard of. You know, because one of the things that was done, the company's been around, I believe, since 2004, if I recall correctly. And it was very interesting, early on in the development of A10, they wanted to rewrite the operating system, what we call our ACOS. Well, they took this, it took a significant period of time, which is not insignificant in Silicon Valley to rewrite everything, your foundation you're starting from.
Right.
But we're still reaping the rewards from that rewrite.
Okay.
When they went through, they recognized what they wanted to do to try and bring a symmetric multiprocessing capability really to the masses as far as for commercial and the federal government. Because of that, we're able to really become a mission partner. I think a very good example of this in the commercial space, we had a very large software company came to A10 and was interested and said, in your application delivery controller, native in your environment, you have some capabilities to mitigate against denial of service attacks. Can you expand upon that? Is that something that you can improve upon? And really at A10, when we have our clients aren't just clients, they're mission partners, and we said, we think we can improve upon what we do today. That development led to a platform that is really our TPS, our threat protection system. And it really, I guess the piece I want to impart about A10 is, while we're headquartered in San Jose, California, in Silicon Valley, we still are in touch with our customers, because we want to be a partner to understand what is it that they need, what are the pain points, because we won't be able to, we can't do everything well, because if you do everything well, you do nothing well. What we really want to discover is, what are the things that really fall into our space, what we do well today. Can we help you with that? Is that something that we can improve upon and take one area, our SSL offload as an example. That was something that we did. We were high speed. We expanded upon that to provide the break-in inspect, or SSLi. And so we look for areas where we have a solid foundation, that fits within A10's mission space, and said, how can we help partners, to improve either security, scalability, uptime, etc.
Well, extremely informative, and I think from a technical perspective, you've given us a very good visualization of your product sets and the things that you do. So it's really been a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.